So now you're like 1,800 feet up, something. You're almost to the top. You have a little bit of a situation, we'll say. You say, I climbed into the upper crux, feeling good about doing things legit. And then I ground to a halt. I'd expected to find some sort of different hold or sequence from the one I'd used 2 days earlier, which had felt pretty desperate, but perhaps I'd done it wrong. This time, in the same position, on the same holds, I realized there were no better options. I had a moment of doubt, or maybe panic. It was hard to tell which. Although I'd freed the pitch maybe 2 other times the year before, I could remember nothing of the sequence or holds, perhaps because there aren't any.
It's very dramatic writing. I'm like, oh God.
A gigantic old oval carabiner hung from a bolt about 2 inches above the pathetic ripple that was my right hand hold. I alternated back and forth, chalking up my right hand and then my left, switching feet on marginal smears to shake out my calves. I couldn't make myself commit to the last terrible right foot smear I needed to snag the jug. I'd stalled out in perhaps the most precarious position of the whole route. I considered grabbing the beaner. With one pull, I'd be up and off. Tourists' oblivious laughter spilled over the lip. Tons of people were up on top. I was in a very private hell. I stroked the beaner a few times, fighting the urge to grab it, but also thinking how foolish it would be to die on a slab, sliding and bouncing almost 2,000 feet to my death when I could so easily save myself. My calves were slowly getting pumped. I knew I should do something soon, since treading water was only wearing me out. Down climbing never occurred to me. I was going up. It was just a matter of how high, one way or another. But now, real fear seized me. Once again, I took a deep breath, studied the holds in front of me, and tried to think rationally about what I had to do. Although I never wanted to be on that slab in the first place, I had to finish what I'd started without invalidating my ascent. Finally, I compromised. I kept my hand on the pathetic ripple, but straightened my right index finger just enough for the tip of my last pad to rest on the bottom of the oval. My thought was, if my foot blew, I could snatch the beaner with one finger and check my fall. I smeared my foot, stood up, and grabbed the jug. No problem. I was delivered, free from my little prison, where I'd stood silently for a good 5 minutes. And I hadn't cheated by grabbing the beaner. I took the final 5-7 slab to the summit at a near run. 20 or more hikers sat on the edge of the precipice, witnessing my final charge. But no one said a word. No yells, no pictures, nothing. Maybe they thought I was a lost hiker. Maybe they couldn't conceive of where I'd come from, or maybe they just didn't give a shit. When I mantled onto the actual top, I was met with a flood of humanity. 100-odd people spread across the summit plateau. Tourists ate lunch next to me. They made out, took scenic photos. People everywhere. It was so weird. Yeah, so Half Dome. You can hike up Half Dome like a normal person can get permits and hike up Half Dome, and they got these cables that you can kind of go up in between. So there's normal people up there.
Though that was written pre-permitting system.
Oh,
and so
okay.
That's why it's funny because I mentioned
It's
how
a zoo
crowded
now.
it was. No. So it used to be a zoo, and now with the permits, it's way less zooey. Yeah, because nowadays it's rare to see so many people on top at any given time because their permits. But anyway, yeah, hearing that, I was like, oh, I kind of forget because there have been permits for quite a long time now. Yeah. But yeah, back then it was just free for all, and so the cables would get packed, and there'd be so many people on top, it got slightly dangerous, and so they instituted the permitting system. But
So yeah, and I bet people didn't even like comprehend what had just happened. Like you just show up, they kind of like, oh,
it's funny because when you climb Half Dome with a partner in climbing gear, and you have all your gear jangling on your harness as you get over the top, then when you get over, people are like, oh my god, how many days do you spend on the wall? That's incredible. Like, what do you do? But when you top out free soloing, I don't even have a shirt on. I've got like nothing. I'm just sort of like, people are like, that guy looks psycho. Like kids, don't make eye contact. It's like who's that guy? It's like a whole different vibe.
That's that moment right there, right? Where you like kind of not feeling the next move, really, is what it is. And if you've never done any rock climbing, what you're doing with your feet, I don't think I've ever even felt freaking the way it's supposed to feel like when I'm rock climbing. So what you're doing, Echo Charles, is you're taking your foot. You got like rock climbing shoes on, but there's very little to. It's not like a step. It's not even like an edge. It's just like smooth.
It's like a blank ripple.
Yeah, and you're just kind of.
I'm looking around the table for something like comparable, like ripple wise. But it's just
like this right here.
Tiny.
No, I was trying to think about like this part of the lens.
Oh, damn.
You know what I mean? Like not on the edge, but like on the part that's just slightly slanted.
Yeah.
Where like, if you just, and because climbing shoes are, really tight with like a precise edge to them, and they have rubber that's like stickier than a normal shoe. And so if you just imagine putting your big toe against that ripple and like pushing against that and then sort of balancing just right. It's like, it's all. Yeah, but that's why I'm saying that's a style of climbing that, you can practice and you can prepare for, but no matter how strong you are, it doesn't make it feel any easier.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's a tough thing. Like, it's a tough style to free solo because no matter, it always feels a little on edge. You're like, what if my foot slips?
Yeah, because what's the term you use? Blow. If your foot blows out.
Yeah, if you blow a foot,
like that sometimes happens, right?
Yeah, yeah, it happens if you weight it wrong. Like, you'd like to think that there's a degree of control to it where, like, you only blow your foot if you're inattentive in how you place it, or if your shoes are old, or if the friction's bad, or if, there are a lot of freaking variables. And so then you're sort of like, well, but it feels random because you're like, oh, I thought it was good and my foot blew.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, oops, well, I must have placed it poorly or something. But, it doesn't help if you're dead. But.
No. And then, so you get done with this. And again, this is just like your word. You're like, told your buddy like, hey, I free soloed half dome by the way yesterday or whatever, and then he posts it somewhere on the interwebs, and then people kind of catch what you're doing.
Yeah, I kind of forget how all this stuff played out because so that was in 2008, which feels like a long time ago now, and that was like pre-social. I didn't have a smartphone yet. There was no easy way to disseminate information around climbing like that, and so I did it. My friends knew about it at some point. I obviously told a few people. I'd climbed the wall with a partner 2 days before with a rope to practice it to see if it was doable, and so he knew that I was at least toying with the idea. He was kind of like, oh, why are we going up here to practice? Like, obviously he kind of had a sense of it, and so I texted him when I was done just so he wouldn't be worried, and texted like the people I was climbing with the next day to be like, okay, let's go do whatever. And I don't really know how it spread from there, but then the next year we filmed the movie Alone on the Wall, which is what you saw on film festivals and things that toured with Real Rock, and it went on the Banff Mountain Film Tour thing, so it kind of toured internationally. And so I feel like the real, the Half Dome free solo sort of became a big thing sort of a year and a half later.
You're already over it.
Yeah, by then I'd already done a bunch of other solos, I'd been on a couple expeditions. Yeah, it was like ancient history by then. But.
Dang, and then you had to go back and reenact it.
Yeah, but that's fine because that was just like 2 days of work on Half Dome basically.
Look, like I said, it would make me mad. I'm getting mad for you right now, and apparently it doesn't make you mad at all. Like, I'm
no.
Bro.
Well, can you imagine a better place to work? I'm sort of like, I'm going up with 3 of my good buddies to go camp at one of the most beautiful places in the world, and this is what I do for a job. You're like, this is awesome. Just. And then the part, so this is the thing that I think people don't totally get, and there's a lot of these films like Alone on the Wall when you're like, that's such crazy free soloing. What you're seeing is the safest and most secure stuff on the whole route. Like, you're not seeing any of the stuff where I actually think I could fall. You're seeing the stuff that I feel totally comfortable doing on command in weird weather, like just whatever. When the guy tells you that it's time to go, you're like, okay, I can go. So whatever you're seeing is like the chill stuff.
Yeah.
So just imagine the not chill stuff.
In the book, you talk about the fact that the move that I just read, you're like, you didn't do that again. You didn't reenact that one.
No, we didn't run that pitch.
You're like,
no.
hell no.
Yeah, hell no. Hell no. Or if I was going to, I'm sure I could do that again if I had to, but if I went up there again, I would make some major marks with chalk all over, be like left foot, left foot, and like be positive of like, this is exactly how I do it every time. And that's a big part of the difference in my process between the Half Dome experience and then later free soloing El Cap. Because like that passage you read in the intro with the boulder problem on El Cap, that was perfectly executed where I knew exactly what to do. So I was sort of able to go into autopilot and just do it. Whereas on Half Dome, you're up there all self-conscious the whole time, being like, is this the right way? Is this the right foot? Should I try a different foot? But that feels even worse. I should try an even different, it's like you're just doing different stuff, and it's like you're panicking.
Yeah, well, even when you're climbing Half Dome, I didn't read this part, but you like got a little lost and turned around on the route itself, which is a little crazy.
Yeah, it's because I'd intended to go one way, and then I got up there and I just wasn't feeling that great. And I was sort of like, I knew that there existed an easier way that bypassed one of the cruxes in the middle of the wall, but I'd never actually gone the easier way. But I was like, I'll figure it out. And then it turns out I totally overshot the easy way and did a bunch of stuff that was unfortunate. But that was a whole different experience, because then you think you're just lost in the middle of this 2,000-foot wall. And you're like, holy shit. Like you're seeing no signs of human passage. There are like bushes in the cracks. And you're kind of like, am I like totally lost up here? But eventually I found my way back to the route.
And eventually, if you could sit, you mentioned in the book, like, well, I could sit here and wait till some more climbers and yell at them and like get some help if I had to. And then it's the way you described getting helicopter rescued. It seemed like you would rather die. That's the way. You didn't say that in the book, but it seemed like you would rather die.
The deepest of shames.
Yeah.
That'd be. No, I mean, that's the interesting thing with free soloing in Yosemite in particular, because Yosemite's quite popular. I mean, they're tourists, they're climbers, they're folks around. And so you could always yell for help. You could always just sit down on a little ledge. And that's the thing with free soloing, is that if you slip and fall, you're going to die for sure. But if you just suddenly had a change of heart and you're like, you know what, I'm not into this, like I can't do it or something, you could find a little stance here or there. Like the slab pitch that I'm describing on Half Dome, it starts off of this little ledge feature, sort of half the size of this table, let's say. So you could just go sit on that little ledge and just sit there carefully for like a day or two and wait for somebody to get you. And in the grand scheme of survival situations, like you'd be fine. You'd shiver through the night, and in a day or two, someone would collect you, and it'd be better than dying.
Yeah,
it'd be deeply embarrassing and sort of a, it'd be a hard thing to overcome confidence-wise, but you'd be alive, and that'd be fine.